Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, get ready, because today we are diving into a totally new paradigm that might just force us to rethink everything we thought we knew about how our cosmos actually began. Seriously, prepare for a massive shift in perspective here. Now, most of us are pretty familiar with the standard Big Bang model, right? A hot, dense explosion that eventually cooled down to form stars, galaxies, and, well, us. But as incredibly successful as that model is at explaining how the universe evolved, it leaves this massive, glaring question completely unanswered right at the starting line. I mean, really think about it for a second. Standard cosmology does a great job describing how matter and energy changed over billions of years, but it completely assumes that space and time were just already there, like a pre-built stage waiting for the cosmic play to start. It tells us how the universe expanded, sure, but it doesn't tell us what space physically is, or what created the arena for the Big Bang to happen in the first place. And that brings us to a really fascinating theoretical framework by Satish B. Thorite called Dynamic Vacuum Field Theory, or DVFT for short. There's this quote from the source material that I absolutely love. It says, "In the beginning, there was not pure nothingness." DVFT introduces this incredibly profound concept. The universe didn't just pop into existence from pure emptiness or some microscopic singularity. Instead, it began from a complete, perfectly balanced reservoir of latent possibility. It wasn't empty. It was just unmanifested. All right, here's our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to start by looking beyond the Big Bang. Then examine this unmanifest vacuum, witness the actual birth of gravity, map out how the cosmic web was built, redefine dark energy entirely, and finally look ahead to the ultimate fate of the universe. Let's get into it. So, before we get too deep into the weeds, let's ground ourselves. What exactly is DVFT? Well, dynamic vacuum field theory proposes that the deepest physical reality isn't made of particles, and it's definitely not just empty space. It is a single dynamic vacuum field. Everything we know, space, time, matter, gravity, it's all generated simply through the internal transition of this one single field. There are no extra ingredients being dumped into the mix. Literally everything comes from the vacuum. Let's track exactly how this played out chronologically. Before the origin, the vacuum was hanging out in this unmanifest, perfectly coherent state. But it couldn't stay perfectly balanced forever. The potential demanded expression. And this triggered what the theory calls a tachyonic roll-down. It's a bit of a technical term, but just picture a perfectly balanced sphere sitting at the very top of a hill, and it finally starts rolling down. This wasn't some explosion into space. It was the transformation of the vacuum into a state that could produce space itself. And as it rolled down, it tried to synchronize. Where it synchronized perfectly, we got smooth spacetime. But where it didn't, well, we got gravity wells, which eventually trapped matter to build the galaxies. And this right here is an absolutely crucial tenet of the whole theory. Space is not an empty stage where things happen. Space actually is the smoothly synchronized state of the vacuum itself. And time? Time isn't some external clock ticking away outside the universe. Time is simply the irreversible ordering of this vacuum phase. Once the vacuum rolled down and created all this structure, it couldn't be undone. The arrow of time was quite literally born from the ordering of the vacuum. Now, here's where things get really wild. That roll down happened incredibly fast, like way faster than light could coordinate across the expanding universe. So naturally, not all of the vacuums synchronized perfectly. When it does manage to sync up perfectly, you get the smooth, invisible background of normal space. But when neighboring regions completely mismatch their phases, they can't smoothly connect. The amplitude of the vacuum sharply drops, leaving behind these vast, frozen scars in the field. These are called Kibble-Zurich defects. And these trapped scars actually became the universe's very first gravity wells. And you know what? This actually solves one of the biggest, most frustrating headaches in modern physics: dark matter. Standard cosmology tells us dark matter is this mysterious, invisible cloud of particles that we literally can't detect, but we assume is there because we see its gravity. DVFT just completely redefines this. Dark matter is not a hidden particle at all. It is simply the gravitational pull of those frozen Kibble-Zurich vacuum scars. Space itself is scarred, and that scarring creates the exact gravity wells we've been blaming on some invisible particle. So how do we get from scars to the visible universe we actually live in? Well, once ordinary baryonic matter, the normal gas and dust that makes up stars, Once that came into existence, it didn't have to spend billions of years slowly clumping together to invent structure. It just fell into these massive, pre-existing vacuum scars. The matter was just the paint. The vacuum defect was the canvas. If a defect was spherical, the matter fell in and, boom, an elliptical galaxy. If the defect was twisted, it sculpted a spiral galaxy. If it had multiple cores, it formed an irregular galaxy. Think about what that actually means. The famous Hubble classification of galaxies, those beautiful different shapes we observe through our telescopes, it isn't just some random result of how gas clumped together over time. It's literally a fossil record. The shapes of the galaxies we see right now are the visible, late-time expressions of the vacuum's primordial geometry, frozen into place right at the very beginning of the universe. And wow, does this scale up beautifully? These defects didn't just sit around in isolation. Where multiple defect wells gathered together, they pulled in enough matter to form massive galaxy clusters. Where correlated networks of defects got stretched across vast distances, they became the glowing filaments of the cosmic web. And what about those massive, dark, empty voids between the filaments? They aren't failures of structure where nothing grew. They are actually areas of highly successful synchronization. They're the places where the vacuum relaxed perfectly smoothly, leaving absolutely no scars behind to trap matter. Which naturally brings us to the other giant elephant in the room, dark energy. The standard model says the universe's expansion is accelerating, and we usually blame that on some arbitrary cosmological constant or an unknown fluid just pushing everything apart. But the DVFT model is so much more elegant. Remember how the vacuum didn't finish perfectly synchronizing everywhere? Dark energy is simply the residual synchronization pressure of the vacuum. It is the gentle, ongoing unwinding of the tension that was left behind from that very first primordial roll-down. I mean, the elegance here is just off the charts. Dark matter and dark energy are not two completely separate problems that force physicists to just invent new particles or constants to balance the math. They are two scales of the exact same vacuum history. Dark matter is the trapped, localized mismatch of the vacuum phase. Dark energy is the global, residual pressure of the vacuum still trying to fully synchronize. They are quite literally two halves of the same coin. So let's pull all this together and look at this massive paradigm shift, where the standard model constantly relies on these independent, unknown sectors, like, unknown collisionless particles for dark matter and some mysterious fluid for dark energy. DVFT elegantly unites all of these disconnected cosmological mysteries into one single physical mechanism. Everything, the grand structure of the cosmic web, the invisible gravity holding galaxies together, the energy pushing the universe apart, it all traces back to exactly how that single dynamic vacuum field relaxed, fragmented, and locked in its memory. And because this theory links them so deeply, it actually makes a very specific, hard, testable prediction. If DVFT is correct, then dark energy and dark matter halos absolutely must evolve together over cosmic time. In the standard model, they operate totally independently. But in DVFT, because they are physically driven by the exact same ongoing vacuum relaxation process, our observations of how dark energy evolves and how galactic halos evolve should perfectly mirror one another. This is huge because it gives astrophysicists a direct way to actually test the theory. Okay, so if the vacuum is still relaxing today, what does that mean for the future? Well, the fate of the universe entirely depends on the future synchronization of this field. If the vacuum finally achieves complete coherence, the cosmic acceleration might actually weaken, settling us into a nice, quiet, peaceful state. But if there's a residual tension that can literally never unwind, it might just accelerate endlessly. Or, if the vacuum overshoots its balance, the universe might cycle through phases, like the rhythm of a field endlessly searching for equilibrium. The big takeaway here is that the universe is not just some random machine built from disconnected parts thrown together in a chaotic explosion. It is one single, self-organizing field. Everything we see through our telescopes, everything we touch, the very space we move through, it is all simply the visible history of the vacuum remembering its past, relaxing its tension, and revealing itself. Which leads us to a thought that honestly just kind of blows my mind. In this framework, matter is simply a stable excitation of the vacuum field. That means the atoms in your body aren't separate from the fabric of space. You literally are the vacuum made stable. So I want to leave you with this. If you are a stable expression of the very field that spans the entire cosmos, what is the universe remembering and expressing through you? Definitely something to think about the next time you look up at the night sky. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring.